Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Eddie Labour, Committee Chairman. I'm going to do the normal administration first, and then I'll talk through the running order of tonight. My first welcome is to those who are in the public gallery and also those who will watch this on the Council's YouTube channel. The agenda we're taking tonight is the one that was published, with the exception of item 12, Kingsway House, Horton Road, Useley, which was withdrawn by the Head of Planning earlier this week. For those who are intending to speak tonight, you will be filmed, and that will be on the Council's YouTube channel. Those who are in the audience won't be visible pretty much from the cameras. The cameras are this way. Could I ask everybody, including officers, councillors and petitioners, to please clearly speak into your microphones, because that otherwise the record gets a bit difficult. All the items are in part one tonight, so therefore all will be taken in part one. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
All members are present, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I do declarations of interest? Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, I just want some legal advice. I think it's non-petitional, but obviously we know many of the members of the trustee board through other councillors or externally. So I just want to know whether, for myself, I know the manager and I know the chairman and I know various other people.
Sorry, excuse me. Is it a personal interest or are you quite familiar with are you fairly familiar with them or?
I don't know. There has to be, yes, I suppose in some ways I know them very well.
As long as it's a non-pecuniary interest, I can't imagine it being an issue or prejudicial. No. Yes, as long as you come in to the committee meeting with an open mind.
Of course.
Then it should not be a problem.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have the minutes of the meeting 21st of June in the bundle. I'm going to take those at the end because I believe they're not 100% ready to be signed off yet, so I want to take those at the end when we finish debate, if I may. There'll be no matters notified in advance. All matters are in part one. Okay. We have one petition item tonight, that is item 6. This is a meeting of the Planning Committee held in public, but not a public meeting. Therefore, the rights to address us as set out in the Council's Constitution, as summarised in committee papers, and as I will outline in a moment. Petitioners have a right to address us for 5 minutes. You get 4 minutes green, 1 minute amber, and when it goes red, I will stop you. Anyone who addresses us, members of the committee have the right to ask them questions. Whether they do or don't, it are matters of clarification. If there are issues raised during a petition that raise planning matters that we need officer comment on, I will pick those up with officers at the end and not take it out of people's time. The applicant is then entitled to 5 minutes under the same rules, and I will enforce the rules for all parties, so just bear that in mind. No ward councillors are present in the audience for this one that I can see, and no ward councillors have indicated to me that they wish to speak, but we'll see if that changes as we go. Let me introduce you to... I missed one, sorry. In my scan I missed Councillor Bells. Were you intending to speak or not? You're not, okay. Okay. My apologies, I did miss one in the back corner. Right. My voting members of the committee tonight, I only get a vote if this goes to a tie, so assuming everybody else can sort themselves out, I don't. Far right, Councillor Stead, then we have Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Morgan, Councillor Edwards, then we have Councillors Curling, Councillor Duncan and Councillor Oswell on my left. The presenting team tonight is rather large. We have Matt Bahan-Ranger, who will be doing highways. Matt Kozlowski is Principal Planning Officer and is doing some of the presentations. Alex Krushak, the Planning Services Manager, is doing others. James Roger, the Head of Planning, provides the usual advice. Alex is my clerk. Luke Taylor is another member of Democratic Services who is new and is therefore observing what we do tonight. And Jyoti Metra is our legal advisor. That's enough of the preliminaries. If I can turn, please, to item 6, Woodbridge House, New Windsor Street, Uxbridge, page 15. Alex, I think this is one of yours.
Thank you. I'll just sit back a little so you can see behind me. So, this is the application site. The application site is a locally listed building located in the conservation area, and the proposal is for the demolition of the existing almshouses, 20 almshouses that exist on the site, and their replacement with 30 new units. If I run through the plans first, these are the plans of the existing buildings. This is the existing layout at ground floor, at first floor, and the roof plan. This is the dining hall, which currently exists as a separate building on the site. And these are the elevations of the building. So you've got the front elevations at the top, and these are side elevations. The existing building, as you'll have seen from the earlier plans, is in a horseshoe configuration. The proposal is to demolish the existing building and to replace it with new buildings to increase the overall provision on the site. And this plan shows the existing layout of the buildings in the horseshoe in the green dotted line, and then the new buildings proposed in the grey blocks. This is the layout plan for the new application site, and at first floor, and at third floor. So the existing 2-storey buildings are to be replaced with 3-storey buildings, but broken up into distinct blocks. There's also ancillary buildings separate, housing refuse, and these are the plans for those which are located on the site. So these are the elevations of the new building. You can see its 3-storey form and the materials and design approach which has been taken. And that's the existing levels for the existing site plan. Also within the submission made in support of this application is shadow analysis, seeking to demonstrate that there is no increased impact for those adjacent neighbouring properties for the change to the built form. If you recall, we're going from 2 stories to 3 as part of the development. And similarly, this is the daylighting plan, and that also concludes that the developments have a similar level of overshadowing and impact on neighbouring properties, and that's what they sought to demonstrate in their submission. This is the skylighting factor, so you'll see that there will continue to be views of the skyline available to the existing properties, notwithstanding the bulk and form of the new proposal. Aerial photograph of the location showing that it is currently completely surrounded by existing development. It's accessed in this area here off the main road, and you enter into a contained courtyard which is ringed by the existing building. These are the photographs of the existing building, looking to one side first. This is the front elevation. This conservatory element here is a later addition to the original building, and the other side forming the courtyard. Here you can see the boundary treatment of vegetation which separates the site to the neighbouring properties. I believe that's in the Lynch, and that might be Lynch Close on the other side. And those are the properties, so this is what will face onto what would be the car parking area. These are photographs taken showing the context in relation to the close proximity to Uxbridge Town Centre. And here is a photograph which seeks to demonstrate how constrained the existing site is in terms of surrounding development. So for clarity of the site, you can just see here, these are the dormer windows or the gable elements of the existing roof form of the site, and you can see it being surrounded by existing development. Okay. The key aspect for this application is the loss of the locally listed building. If I can just clarify, the concern that officers have, and the recommendation before you is for refusal, is that the loss of this existing locally listed building has not been outweighed or a case has not been outweighed for its loss in terms of public benefits that would derive from the proposal. What I thought might be helpful is to read out an assessment of the existing building on site so you can understand why we think that it is of merit.
Can you go over that, Alex? We can't hear you at all back here.
I'll move the microphone closer to me. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. So I've just gone through the slides to show the context of the site, and what I'm about to do is to read out the assessment that was set out in the pre-application submission for the scheme, which sets out the view we have as officers of the merit of the existing building on site. So if I just read verbatim, Woodbridge House was built in 1906 by the celebrated local architect William Eves for the Uxbridge United Charities. It is a two-storey U-shaped building arranged around a central courtyard. It was designed in the style of a workers' cottages, each ground floor flat being handed, the paired front doors having external door between them leading to the first floor flats above, through with some slight modification to this at the corners. In external appearance, Woodbridge House has many similarities with the cottages built by Parker and Unwin at Hampstead Garden suburb. Very much in the style of vernacular cottages, Woodbridge House has features such as steep roofs, dominant and ornate chimney stacks, the pairing of dormers with the which break the eaves line, open eaves, applied timber framing in the gables, ornate brick banding, runs of 3 side-hung casements, the use of ocelli, the finishing of upper walls in whitewashed rough cast with the lower in brick, the arrangement around planned open spaces. The original plans and elevations demonstrate that much of the external appearance of the front of the building, together with its general layout, have survived intact, a tribute to its being used as almshouses for over a century. Woodbridge House also appears to be in good condition, having been well maintained over the years. Although acknowledged as not being quite statutory listable, neither are the cottages at Hampstead Garden suburb, Woodbridge House is considered to be a very good locally listed building, which makes a positive contribution to the special architectural and historic interest of the Rockingham Bridge Conservation Area. Rockingham Bridge Conservation Area was designated less than 3 years ago, in December 2012. At the time of designation, a leaflet was published with a statement of significance. This states that the conservation area is characterised by good quality, tightly developed 19th century 2-storey workers' terraces, and it has an urban character softened by green spaces and modest plot sizes. Woodbridge House, though a little later in date, is nevertheless very much consistent with this character. The statement picks out for particular mention Rockingham Bridge, Union Villas, Woodbridge House, which is this site, and Fassnage Park. Woodbridge House is the single most important building in the conservation area and the only one to be locally listed. In conclusion, Woodbridge House is a locally listed building of some quality which makes a positive contribution to the character of Rockingham Bridge Conservation Area. It is considered that its significance is such that its demolition would be a great loss, not only in itself but to the character of the conservation area. So that's an assessment of what the value of the existing building is, and as part of your assessment this evening as the committee, I'd refer you to the suggested public benefits that the applicant has set out, and they're summarised for you on page 34 of your report. 2 other matters in which to conclude. On the addendum sheet which has been circulated, we've clarified that the existing building has 10 almshouses units at the ground floor and 10 units on the first floor. And we've also clarified that whilst the developer came forward with the suggestion that the development be built to Lifetime's home standards, this has recently been superseded and is now replaced by elements within the building regulations. To be consistent with Lifetime home standards, you would need to build to what's now called Building Regulations M4(2), which is accessible housing. The London plan requirement is for new developments to be built with 90% to be M4 Class 2 accessible housing and 10% M4 Class 3, which is wheelchair accessible housing. And so for new developments in this borough, that is what we would seek to achieve. That concludes the presentation. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, one last thing. I nearly forgot. You'll see 2 reasons for refusal on your papers. One is the reason for refusal against the loss of the locally listed building. The second is a refusal reason relating to the lack of a Section 106 agreement. That is perhaps procedural in its nature. We have not entered into negotiations about the 106 given the recommendation as officers, and therefore we need to cover ourselves should we end up in an appeal scenario to make sure that we can secure those contributions at a later date. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alex. I would clarify for the public record that members undertook a site visit last Friday, so members have actually seen this site and have actually walked. Most of those on the site visit also walked the conservation area itself. Members have also, the officer referred to a statement of the benefits of the conservation area, and that statement has also been in the published version of that has been seen by committee members. So, 2 clarifications. Right, I'm moving into the petitions on this one. I have a petition in objection, Mr. Gareth Meek-Brown. If you press the button, we will start the timer as you begin to speak.
Okay. Thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to speak. We started the petition against the application because we oppose what we think will be a damaging and inappropriate demolition of an historic building in a designated conservation area. A lot of what I was going to say would just replicate what you've heard about the building, so I'll probably be briefer than I would have otherwise been. It's an interesting building. You've heard about the interesting features it's got, including the early garden suburb styling, the porthole windows and ornate decorative chimneys, all of which we think makes it a building of interest and character that's not seen elsewhere in buildings in central Uxbridge. It's also part of the area that was designated by the council as the Rockingham Bridge Conservation Area in 2012, and as local residents we really value the special character of the area, and it means that we also value the protection in planning terms that the conservation area brings with its status as a heritage asset. It's the conservation area's only locally listed building. I think it was given that designation by the council in 2010. And I think it's helpful just to consider the building in light of what the council's website says about the local list, which is that it's intended to recognise buildings of architectural and historical importance that contribute significantly to the unique character of the borough. Whilst not statutory listed, these buildings are of good quality design or are historically significant and important to the local community. And then the statement of significance that you've also heard about that was made when the area was designated in 2012 also highlights the positive contribution the building makes. So it's of interest in itself, but it's also consistent with and complementary to its surroundings. So we feel quite strongly that if the locally listed status and the conservation area to mean anything in practice, it can't be right to demolish the area's most significant building when it remains capable of continued use. The application doesn't provide any evidence that there's no market for the existing units. And we do note that in the report the council's access officer has suggested some feasible adaptations to the ground floor to improve access, and we agree that they sound like they could be beneficial for residents. If there is a desire by the applicant to provide additional accommodation for people with more severe disabilities, then we think there must be a more appropriate way of achieving that goal without sacrificing a heritage asset that remains viable. So to sum up, I would just say that Uxbridge already lost a large part of its historic core due to redevelopment in the 60s and 70s. So in our view, we're custodians now of what's left, and protecting it shouldn't be undervalued. So we firmly believe that demolishing Woodbridge House would be a loss in itself. It would cause substantial harm to the conservation area with no compelling argument to justify that harm, and it would also be an unwarranted loss to the history and character of Uxbridge. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask you, have you actually been inside the building? You may have noticed what it's like from the outside. Have you actually been inside the building?
No, I haven't.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a petition in support. Mr. Mick Cater. Anybody here on behalf? Can I just ask you to state your name for the record as you start to speak, just so that we've got it for my clerks?
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Susan James, and I am speaking as the petitioner. UUWT are seeking permission to demolish the present almshouse and replace with a building of up-to-date apartments suitable for living in the 21st century. What is an almshouse? The dictionary says, a house founded by charity for the poor. So they are not asking for redevelopment for profit, but for people who cannot afford their own home in the old urban district of Uxbridge. People are recommended by social services, Age Concern and other agencies, as well as local interfaith groups. The current almshouse was built in the 20th century. Every current facility in the building was retrofitted with electrics, gas, mains water, bathroom, toilet, kitchen, heating, etc. Consequently, the building in 2016 has come to the end of its useful life. Anything UUWT does to the current building is simply a sticking plaster for a very large wound. The bedsits have been declared not fit for purpose by Neil Stubbings, Deputy Director, Social Care, Health and Housing, London Borough of Hillingdon. Neither couples nor people with disabilities can be accommodated. The bedsits are too small and there is no lift to the upper floor. Currently, if people live on the first floor and can no longer climb the stairs, you would have to have a size 3 shoe to fit your foot on the old worn-out stone steps. They have to move from Woodbridge House as they cannot be accommodated. The glassed walkway is an unsightly modern addition that is of no use as a place to sit, as there is not enough room. It is too hot in summer, too cold in winter. It merely acts as a necessary draft excluder for the bedsits. The new purpose-built apartments will have a separate bedroom, separate bathroom and a living, dining, kitchen area and will be wheelchair-friendly. There will be room to have friends and family visit. Each apartment will also have its own outside space, enough for a table and a couple of chairs, so they can enjoy the outside without having to go to the communal area, which is not always possible for less mobile residents. At present, the bedsits are gloomy and have limited views outside. This is due to the high sill levels in the windows. There will, of course, be lift to other floors, so all areas are accessible to all residents. Whilst I believe in conservation of some ancient buildings, may I suggest the conservation of people in a good and safe environment is of much more importance. It cannot be right that a fairly plain building, not regarded as of sufficient quality or heritage value to be on the statutory list, stands in the way of people's well-being. I hope you will take this petition into account when discussing the proposed application. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, my name is Mike Bissiker, and I've been a resident at Woodbridge House for 4.5 years. Hear me now? Yeah. Thank you. I live upstairs. I'm fairly fit at the moment, and unlike some residents who have trouble with the stairways as they're too narrow and steep for the elderly. I should be 70 in February, and I'm not certain that I should be able to cope with the stairs for much longer. I hope that there will be an available ground floor for me to move into, otherwise I don't know what I should do. My neighbour, who became unwell and had to go to hospital, was indeed unable to return to Woodbridge House as she couldn't cope with the stairs, which meant her being unable to leave her flat. Sadly, she has since passed away. All of the residents meet for lunch twice a week in a separate building, and the overriding opinion is that we would all prefer to live in a modern apartment with a separate lounge and bedroom where we can be comfortable and safe and which is readily accessible to all. The present building tends to be very isolating as it does not encourage socialising, particularly as no separate lounge or dining space is available to entertain visitors within the cramped babysit layout. Woodbridge House, which is not viewable from the street, is only visited by people coming to see the inhabitants or who have business there. Since I moved in, I've not been aware of anyone at all visiting because the design of the almshouse. Most people are not aware.
Can I ask you to wind up, please?
Most people are not aware of its existence. I hope that you see your way to approving this petition, as it will improve and enhance the quality of life for myself and for my fellow residents. Thank you.
Do members have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
It's all right, leave it there, because there's another speaker, so that's fine. Okay, thank you. Did you have any questions? Was there a question? Sorry, my fault, I got distracted by... Why would I do that? Never been my habit, Councillor Duncan.
Very much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to clarify that they are almshouses with 20 one-bedroom flats that would be the equivalent of the almshouses now. And it also says that there are going to be 8 one-bed flats intended for open market rental, but for older people. So would they be part of the almshouses community? They would be able to eat with people or seek advice or...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, they will, because as you know, we want to put a cafe and things there, and they will be fully integrated. We won't put a separate floor for them. We will integrate them with the residents of the almshouses, so nobody feels as though they're different.
So they're just rented,
Yes.
these,
Yeah.
and but still owned by the charitable
Yes.
trust.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Just one. For the record, could you let me know, do you have any association with the trust itself?
Yes.
What is that, please, then?
I'm the chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gillam, you're speaking on behalf of the applicant. I would request, as you're pushing it on me tonight, because you've actually had 5 minutes, because the petition is on behalf of the applicant as well, so keep it brief, please.
Just to clarify, I am the applicant. That was a petitioner who'd signed a petition form, so they speak.
No. The petition was on behalf of the applicant. That was the chairman of the trust that was speaking.
Yes, who signed the petition form?
That should be the end of it then.
So I'll allow you a short speech, but please don't push it all the way with me.
Can I start, Chairman? Thank you, Rush, indeed. Good evening. I speak as Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Uxbridge United Welfare Trust, a charitable trust which has been in Uxbridge since 1729. I stress that because we've been around for over 300 years, so it's safe to say we do heritage. The proposal you're considering has a justifiable merits that you should allow to approve the application on a 20th century building that doesn't qualify from listed status. The only refusal reason you need to overcome is based on conjecture, personal opinion, and an access officer's report that concentrates on heritage rather than access. The access officer report offers the throwaway remark, some remedial work would make the ground floor more accessible, but then doesn't go on to substantiate that claim. I note he couldn't even comment on the first floor as he could not gain access. And I know you members, you took a site visit and you could see for yourself the constraints that residents have to suffer there. So with no remedy possible for the first floor, are we to continue as a charity to house only 50% of the poor that we could? We would like to house 20 plus local residents in our almshouses, be they single or couples, abled or disabled. And these units will be of M4 bracket 2 with 10% M4 bracket 3 status. The whole idea of having to move some elderly out because they can't do stairs anymore is antiquated and unfair. As the case officer states, this would put a strain on the council's own housing stock, as you would be expected to house these elderly we no longer can. You've heard already from petitioners that others have had to move out of the scheme because of its failings. You all saw on your site visit the horrid glass lean-to, not a cloisters, as claimed in the officer's report. We've erected in front to try and protect these residents. It's time we gave them, their families, the homes they deserve, not bedsits. The whole idea when your family come round, Chairman, they have to sit on your bed and have a conversation is not right and proper for the 21st century. The Heritage Officer talks about the Rockingham Road Conservation Area and its rows of 19th century terrace houses. Let's be very clear, this is not a terraced house, this is not a 19th century building, it's 20th century built with additions of the mid-20th century on both sides. I want to return to the case officer report where it states, with regard to just demonstrating the substantial public benefits, the applicant has put forward a number of benefits for the proposal that will increase sheltered housing provision, provide affordable housing, is financed without contribution from the public, and addresses an identified deficit in elderly housing provision. This contributes to the social fabric of Uxbridge and reduces inequality and discrimination in existing accommodation offer. That's the actual officer's report. Members should also note, in the case officer's report, he states it will be refused due to the access officer's remarks, but doesn't then supply any refusal reason to back up the access officer's remarks. Members, if you approve this scheme, you will guarantee that almshouses can continue in Uxbridge. We need approval to maintain the almshouses. As I said, we're a charity. We're guided by the Charity Commission. They would look unfavourably if we were half empty. Now, finally, I wish to say that the officer stated that this is of historical importance and just missed out by a whisker by having listed legal status. Well, in fact, on the council's website today, it's locally listed number 5. Now, you members will know 1 to 4 is not listed, 5 is of the lowest level. So it's not fair to say that it just missed out on an election. I hope, and Uxbridge United Welfare Trust hope, you will recognise the importance of this application to guarantee almshouses for the poor and needy of Uxbridge and approve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, members got any questions? I have a couple, but members have any questions? Are you... the officer report indicates to me you're currently full anyway. Is that true?
No, we're not full, Chairman, and the report that your Heritage Officer included was factually incorrect, and we're not full. We cannot be full because we struggle to house people in the first floor.
How many units are currently occupied?
85% full currently, but as you heard from some of the residents and all the people that are here tonight, they're concerned, Chairman, because if they can't do stairs, they have to relocate.
I'll just stick to my questions and we'll get there. Second question, the access officer is indicating in the report that with modifications, the ground floor units could be made accessible.
It's quite funny that, isn't it? The ground floor has to be adjusted to be accessed. The ground floor. What's the question, Chairman?
My question is, you can achieve 50% accessibility on the current building. I think that was where I was coming from.
Oh, you're happy for us to be 50% full? We're not.
Well, no, Councillor, don't pick an argument with me. I'm asking you a question. Do you accept, just the clarification for the committee, that 50% of the units could be made accessible in the current building?
I accept that we could be... I accept that we would have to spend an awful lot of money to try and make the ground floor accessible.
So the answer is yes to my question. Right. The committee has to understand all the facts. I'm not loading this in either direction, but let's be clear. Why is we talk about access, and I fully accept the point about the stairs and the ability to walk up and down them. But this new building is only 10% wheelchair accessible, isn't it? You're only building it to the highest standard for 10%. The other 90 is only lifetime homes.
No. You can hear from the officers, they might clarify this. If you want to just check with the officers, Chairman, but we are accessible, step-free access for all on all floors.
But are they wheelchair usable for more than 10%? That's my question.
Yes, Chairman, of course.
Right. I think the head of planning has a view on that, so we'll hear that in a moment. Before I open this debate up.
Yeah, so the proposed building does have lifts provided, so it could be built to be fully wheelchair accessible. I know the technical point the access officer was making is that the plans, although they have the lifts, they hadn't been, in his opinion, fully spec'd out to the London plan fully wheelchair accessible, but they could be. So what I'd say to members on that point is if you wished and Alex can, I know Alex has got some details on the precise clarification of a fully wheelchair accessible unit, but you could condition that all of the units are fully wheelchair accessible, I think. But the plans themselves at the moment don't quite reach that point.
Okay.
But the
Thank
lists are there, so it could be made to
Good.
happen.
That was what I understood it to be. I just wanted members to be clear on that. Okay. This is a complex and controversial proposal. I am going to start, and as is entirely proper, this is a locally listed building making a contribution to a conservation area. So the debate that we need to start is the principal one, which is where the refusal reason comes from, which is that we should retain the locally listed building, because that's what the refusal reason is in essence saying. If members conclude that redeveloping it is possible, we then go on to the merits of the new building and whether that's acceptable. So who wants to take me out on Councillor Edwards? Away you go.
I will. Sorry, this is a difficult one, and we shouldn't readily give permission to knock down locally listed buildings, particularly when one was only listed a short while ago. So I actually start from a threshold of being opposed to it. However, in the context of this particular building, having visited the site, the contribution it makes to the wider environment, i.e. being a visible part of the Uxbridge street scene, is quite limited in that it is only visible from a very small angle in the road. Its existence, whilst valued, therefore to a degree is diminished in my view, and that might reflect the level of listing. In terms of the policy, if I just draw attention to page 33 of our report, where we talk around the NPFF and paragraph 126 and the heritage assets, it talks about the more important the asset, the greater the weight should be. Well, because of the situation of this particular building, its limited street scene impact, the fact that it is only listed at level 5, for me, takes this towards the lower end of weighting, and therefore I could be open to accepting that there are special circumstances in relating to this particular development that, should the public benefit be significantly great enough, I would agree to its demolition. However, we would need to go further into exploring the public benefits before arriving at that situation.
I'll hold. Yeah, we could easily spend all night on that bit, but I'd like to concentrate on the local listed building to start with. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. As my colleague said, I've been doing planning for many, many years, and heritage has been a strong part of what I've always believed in. But then, on the other hand, I have to understand the situation why these houses were built in the first place. And I think, in my view, that they were built to help people. And unfortunately, times have moved on, technology's moved on, and they are not fit for purpose. And I think, in the essence of what they were built in, I would go against officer's recommendation.
Okay. Anybody else like? Oh, I'm getting some more hands now. So I thought I would eventually. Councillor Duncan, and then I'll go Councillor Curling.
Thank you. Yes, I think that although you're asking us to concentrate on the building itself, we can't do that without considering what it was built for. If it was not built for almshouses, if it was not part of a trust that was providing accommodation for older people who need that kind of care and that kind of environment, it might be a very different matter, because it may then be possible to adapt the building internally to meet modern requirements. And unfortunately, the two are inextricably linked. You must have the use in that building because that's part of the trust. They can't use it for other purposes. They can't do that, and so we'll go and build almshouses elsewhere. It must be on this site. I understand that is part of the trust and how it was set up, and so we have to look at the two together. And as it stands, I don't see any way of actually adapting the building to be completely usable to modern standards and to meet modern needs for those who need this kind of accommodation. And that's the thing that we have to face. We've got to bite that bullet, really. And what do we think about that? I agree with my colleagues opposite. It's a difficult one. Normally, I would be the first, as I think we all would on the planning committee, to say we must retain any asset of heritage value. Of course we must. It's something that we pass on to future generations. It's not just for us. But in this case, I think there is quite a compelling case to say that it's unable to fulfil the purpose for which it was built unless we do demolish it, create...
I won't...
I know, we are aware of that.
Sorry, I can't conduct debate in the audience, please. Members are fully aware it's in the conservation area.
I am aware that it's in the conservation area, Chair, but I'm afraid that in this case I do have to agree with colleagues that we must consider the demolition.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I mean, it is a difficult one because it is in a conservation area and we do want to conserve what's there. Unfortunately, because of the use of this particular building, it can't really be used for anything else. What we will be conserving is just a ruin, because it will just fall into rack and ruin if something isn't positively done to preserve it. So, having been on the site visit and seen the accommodation that it provides, in 1906 it was probably very good accommodation, but in 2016, I mean, they are very, very tiny bed sits. They're not flats, they are very, very tiny bed sits. The small bathrooms and small kitchens are not at all accessible for wheelchair use. Any work that is done on the ground floor to make it wheelchair compatible would be almost rebuilding it in any case. So I'm compelled to agree with the colleagues around the table that although under normal circumstances we would want to do everything we can to preserve listed buildings, locally listed or not, in this particular case the use of that building does come into paramount concern, and you know, I can't really support the officer's recommendations.
That's fine. Councillor Oswald, you indicated as well, then Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I couldn't go to the site visit because I had an appointment with a constituent that I couldn't change. So all I've got in front of me is a report and a set of plans, and I've heard what the petitioners and the applicant have said. Yes, and we've all been involved in conservation over the years. Like Councillor Higgins, I've been on planning committees for a number of years. So this is a difficult one, and so it's difficult sometimes to know which way to fall. Do we fall on the conservation side, or do we fall on the other side that says this building could be vastly improved? Like I said, I didn't go on the site visit, so all I've got in front of me is a report that's for refusal. I thought, when I first read the application, Chairman, I thought it was a good application. And I also read a letter from somebody who I won't name, and I thought that was quite clear as well. So, as I've said, all I've got is a set of plans, and that's what we do these days. When we sit down at planning subcommittees, we agree a set of plans. I'm afraid that I'm also going to go against the officer's recommendation, because I think that this is a good application. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I can't actually add a great deal to what's already been said. Yes, it is a conservation area. Yes, it is a listed building. But at the same time, we also have to think about our residents and the residents that use those particular buildings. In Hertfordshire, over the past 5-6 years, They've closed almshouses and they've fallen derelict, burnt out shells, because they couldn't convert them to current day standards. That could quite easily happen here. We've already heard from Councillor Gillam about, it's only 85% at the moment, and they're having problems with the first floor. If we continue our stance of saying, no, we can't make the changes here, that building has to stay as it is, what will happen in 5-10 years' time? Chances are it will be a shell and a ruin. Then nobody benefits then. So unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, I'm also against the officer's recommendations on this.
Okay, can I ask the head of planning to comment? Because I think you wanted to come in, James.
Yeah, so
You pull that mic forward because we'll never hear you otherwise.
I will note earlier comments. So policy BE8 does say that applications for planning permission to alter or extend statutory listed buildings, all buildings on the local list. So I won't go into, this is a locally listed building, pure and simple. Whether it's a 5 or 6, it's a local listed building. Will normally only be permitted if no damage is caused to historic structures. So what I would say is this development, the starting position, is contrary to development plan policy. That said, there are councils across the country where planning committees are allowing, where they feel the circumstances are appropriate, demolition of locally listed or listed buildings. So what I would say to you as a committee is if someone is going to propose a recommendation to go against officer's recommendation, you do need to set out very clearly why you're satisfied that this proposal should be allowed, because I have to advise you, I think you are going against your own development plan policies.
Thank you. I'm going to go Councillor Yarra, Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it is indeed a very difficult decision that we all have to make, and most of my colleagues have made their decision, and I have made mine. I think it is time, sometimes, when you have to stand up and be counted. Yes, it's going against our policies, but why is it going against our policies? It's going against our policies in order to provide good accommodation for the elderly, which is what it was originally established to do. And the accommodation that we have now is not good for the people who are actually in there. It was in the dim and distant past, but it isn't now. And the people who run the almshouses have got to take that into consideration when they're looking at what service are they providing. And we as councillors have also got to say, how are we going to weigh this up? Are we going to go for care for the elderly, or a locally listed building at level 5? And I'm afraid I have to say that being involved in all sorts of council work, I have to go down in favour of let us make sure that we provide the best we possibly can for those frail people in the latter years of their life, and allow them to have wheelchair access and to have what they need in order to survive. Thank you.
We'll be clear on access in a moment. From the Councillor Edwards, and then I'll take Councillor Duncan. I want to make a comment.
Thank you. I'd just like to build on or answer what our head of planning is advising. I do recognise we would be going against our own policy, and I think that it is important that we do note some of the particular characteristics of this building in this circumstance that separates it from others. I think that the lack of its general public view is an important point of note here. I also think that some of the changes have diminished its value. I do not think the glass conservatory across the front or any of the cloister in any way enhances the building. In fact, greatly detracts from it. So I don't think that this is a particularly fine example of building.
I'm not running a debate. Please.
So they are circumstances that open the door to the possibility of demolition in my mind. What we need to now balance that against is the public benefit. And I do believe, because it is listed and because it's within a conservation area, they need to be very great. And the mere fact that we are making them as the application, does not quite work for me yet. I note that the additional premises will be let at market rate, and that seems to me to go against the notion of this being an almshouse. And if they were not being let at market rate, but at affordable rate, then I think that is an increased public benefit, and that adds, to me, to the argument of gain. I also note from the report that they are only requesting, or presently only specified, 10% to be wheelchair accessible, the M43 standard. And I think that that in itself is wrong. If we are to go down this road, the last thing we want is to take one problem and create another one, which as residents then have to move around according to availability of wheelchair accessible units. If all the units were made M43 standard, again, that enhances the public benefit. And I'm now moving into the realm where I believe the circumstances, the context of the building, the benefits that we are now accruing, to me, justify overturning the officer's recommendation. But the two are linked, as has been said. Falling short of it, if we're going to have no more than 10% wheelchair accessible, which frankly is what we insist on a public block of flats, they're going to be marketed, I don't see how we are moving down that road of greater public benefit. If we're just creating additional flats for rental at profit, again, I don't see where we are gaining that public benefit. So I would like to see, if we were to go down that road, an absolute acceptance that those public gains must be delivered for us to overcome that very high threshold of knocking down a locally listed building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Duncan was the last one I had held, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with the points, and presumably we would get on to more detailed comments. Yes.
I'm going to move to that direction because I think I can see the direction.
But taking up the head of planning's request to us to say why we would be going against policy, I think certainly some of us feel that the almshouses would be unable to fully fulfil the function of almshouses as originally envisaged, that is, a place to care for older people in need, without being redeveloped. The opportunities for adaptation or somehow internal restructuring are insufficient to be able to bring it up to modern day standards. I think if any of us felt that it was possible for that to happen, we would not be going down this road. I say that, and I think other colleagues on the committee would feel likewise. We did look in detail at both ground and first floor flats, and that is the conclusion that I came to, and I believe others came to. So that's our reason for going against the policy. If there was some other way of them continuing, then we would be seeking that and going down that road, but there isn't. That was the result of that. Also, there's a second reason. Yes, sorry about that. That was the first reason that we felt that couldn't happen. The second reason is that if it is unable to continue to function fully as almshouses, it inevitably will prejudice the future of this building. It will prejudice the physical fabric because it will not be fully occupied. There will not be the income to support that to continue, and we don't want it to fall in the sorry state that has happened in some other authorities where they haven't been able to continue, and it's simply to guard against that. So we don't want this to happen through an inevitable process of atrophy. We want to, as I said earlier, really bite the bullet now, try and see that, and try and do what we think is the best under these circumstances. Thank you.
My thanks to Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Duncan, because I think they've all articulated what I'm sensing around the table, and Councillor Stead hasn't come in yet, but I'll bring him in a moment, is the feeling of committee that whilst we would wish to preserve these, that the case is being made that they no longer are fit for their current purpose, and that we can't improve them as they stand, and that if they are to achieve the purpose for which they were set out, we have to look at something else. So, can I take Councillor Stead, and then I'm going to move us into the detail of what is before us, because I think at least one member has already touched on some areas that we might wish to explore further. Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. I did actually go on the site visit as well, and I believe, I'm not a builder of course, I believe that to bring those rooms up to present day standards, it's going to be a huge, huge task. I made a few bullet points, as I said. I don't like to lose locally listed buildings, and none of us do listen to what people have said around this table. But is it fit for purpose? That was mentioned a couple of times, and by one of the officers as well. But what actually swung it for me was the statement from one of the petitioners was people should be considered priority ahead of listed buildings. And I think that's a very strong point. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Edwards, Councillor Higgins, you're going to add a little.
I just think
finishing point.
Just a finishing point. There's a big difference between locally listed and a listed building. And as a committee, we go through this a lot. And if it was a listed building, there'd be a different attitude.
The threshold would have to be much higher.
Much higher.
Much higher.
And also, there would be lots of negotiations with the council to retain as much as possible to renovate that property. And we've done that before and think that can be successful. I think, as my point earlier, and I'll stand by this, is that the gentleman in question that had the idea for this wanted to help the community. That was his dream. And if he was here today, he would be asking us to renovate this place so that he could continue that work of helping the local. Let's get this very clear: the local people and the residents of this borough who live in Uxbridge and Harefield, I think it is as well. And that's what we've got to consider here. I understand all the planning issues here, and I do understand that although our issues are guides, we have to adapt this, but on this case, I can see officers getting nervous because this is a precedent and we're going to go and everybody's going to come. But we've got to make it clear to our officers as well, this is because it's a charity, this is because it's for the people, and it's for the elderly people in this borough. We're becoming an ageing population and we need more hopes. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I think members have made their views clear, unless the head of planning wants to.
I mean, the officer recommendations to refuse, but I think you as a committee have collectively set out enough of an explanation that I'm comfortable that if any third party to ask, the committee has justified a decision should you decide to go against the officer recommendation.
Okay, I'm going to move the debate on because I think the principle is now clear. Alex, could I ask? I'm going to take. Could you just give us some clarity because it has been raised in terms of accessibility? Can we do this M2 and 3 and just help me out?
Okay, so I'm reading from a guidance sheet in front of me. So M42 are accessible and adaptable dwellings. So it's the same as what used to be lifetime homes. The idea is you're providing a dwelling where if the needs of the person in that residence change over time, you can easily adapt and change the dwelling to meet their needs. So it's things such as step-free access to make sure that can be accommodated. M43 is different. M43 is the wheelchair accessible units. Now we've heard different things this evening in terms of what the offer is on the table for the application. The difficulty with that difference and that lack of clarity is an M42 lifetime homes has little impact on the overall footprint and floor space required for a unit. M43 can. You need certain circulation spaces, certain minimum requirements in terms of room sizes and thresholds and doorways to meet that requirement. So there is a difference between what an M42 unit would look like and what an M43, which is a wheelchair accessible unit, would look like in practice. Thank you, Chair.
And this application is 90% M42 and 10% M43.
That's the policy requirement, and as set out in the addendum sheet, that's what we're seeking to achieve if the recommendation were for approval. Yes, Chairman.
just to clarify the point that the access officer was making, so there are lists. What the access officer was saying is the plans that he has looked at are not drawn in such a way that if one applies the criteria for M43, every flat is M43. That's not what the plans are, but the scheme could be adapted if members wanted every unit to be M43.
Okay, I'm getting a load of nods for that, but is that where we are? Yes. Okay, that was relatively painless at this point. Another councillor, before I'll just take the last one that's on my page, and then anybody else got any more. A councillor has raised the question of should we be obviously the current 20 units would be described as affordable housing. They are let below market rent. The new ones, I understand, are for the elderly, but are market rent houses, not affordable. So that is the proposal that is before us. Views, please. Are we happy to proceed on that basis?
Well, obviously, we would like all of them to be affordable, but and that would be our stance on this, I think. I don't know about my colleagues, but certainly I would like all of them to be affordable. But I do recognise that there are people who are older that would like to go into an environment like this and are able to afford that. And if that's going to help that trust, that charitable work to continue, then so be it. I mean, I would prefer that these 8 units were part of the provision of the almshouse provision. I don't know if we've gone into any details with the applicant about why they have structured.
Well, no S106 negotiations have been undertaken because, of course, the officers were earmarking
maybe this would need to be something that would be part of anything, should there be any agreement about this.
There is one way of looking at this, and it would actually fall in favour of not changing the application as submitted. So the way we looked at this application is effectively there are 20 affordable units on site at present. There will be reprovision of 20 affordable units. There's a net gain of 8 units, and then there's 2 staff units. So 8 units is below our affordable housing threshold. So I think the applicant could argue that you're seeking to take 8 units, which you would not normally impose an affordable threshold on, and make them affordable. Does that? Whereas if, for instance, there's a scheme before this committee for 12 units, you would automatically say to me, well, that's more than 10 units. Why isn't there some affordable housing, whatever that proportion may be?
Thank you for that advice. I do appreciate it, but this is a charitable trust. It's not McCarthy and Stone.
Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Higgins, I think I saw an indication.
I would echo here Councillor Duncan's point here. What I'm concerned about is we've heard argument about knocking down, losing a heritage asset to carry on the work of the almshouse, and that is a strong argument. But actually, we're only going to carry on or modernise the existing. The accrued benefit, if you like, the third level, is going to be private business, For me, I'm not persuaded by that argument. I'd only be persuaded by that argument if there was a financial viability that said it wasn't viable to develop the premise as set out unless there were a certain number of marketable premise. And I would then accept it, but it would be driven by a financial viability study rather than by a planning application. I believe the threshold should be they're all affordable unless you can prove that the development is not otherwise possible.
Alex, I take it you had a comment coming in.
Thank you. So just a point of clarification in terms of the MPPF definition of what is affordable. An affordable rented unit, 80% of market rent, and a social rented unit are both counted as affordable terms, forms of tenure in terms of what is an affordable unit. So the planning policy side of it is blind to whether it is social rented or affordable rent. It all constitutes affordable housing and therefore a benefit in planning terms. Thank you.
that took me anywhere forward or not, actually. But
Sorry, I need to clarify that. What's the difference with the market rent then? What are we talking about?
so in other words, if you charge 80% the market rent or less, it counts as affordable in planning terms. Whether that is affordable in other terms, I'm not going to open that debate up because that will get me in
I
all
said
sorts
we
of
should
trouble.
be looking then at the 80% threshold. And
Right,
would
okay.
Mind you.
Councillor Higgins, please.
Yeah, are we getting slightly sidetracked? Is this something that officers need to agree on the 106 agreement anyway? And is it something that really should come to the chairman and the lead opposition on this point?
What I'm trying to get is a committee steer for what committee are asking officers to do before I make a proposal in a moment.
Fine.
Yeah, that's all I... so that...
Sorry, do you want me to help you with this?
Yeah.
So refusal reason 2, we haven't actually discussed in detail, but as Alex raised, that was a technical one that would fall away if there was a legal agreement provided. So I have to say my thought process is that we would all, actually, were you approving this, we would be looking at it to be a Section 106 approval. So you'd have the carbon reduction, and then you'd have another term that related to what you're requesting as a committee. And then if you approved it, you would then say to us as officers, these are the heads of terms, you go away and get the legal agreement agreed with the applicant. If the applicant refuses to sign it, it then comes back to planning committee. So that will be basically the position. So we don't necessarily, what I'm basically saying is we don't have to defer this to,
no, we're not going to.
If you're happy that you know the wording of a head of term, then we can take that away as officers.
Right. Can I take this forward, because I think we need to looking at. Can I just make a suggestion as to what I would like someone to propose in a moment, and then you tell me if I've got it correct for you? Well, no, I'm just trying to help. What I think we're going to suggest is that. It is clear that members' wish will be in a moment to overturn the officer recommendation. That is abundantly clear, although that hasn't been formally proposed and seconded yet, but I think from everything I've got, that is clear. It is also clear that in terms of approving this application tonight, we haven't got any planning conditions before us, and I'm not going to ask officers to do them on the hoof, because that's not right. Having said that, the planning conditions for a new housing blocks are relatively standard. Most of us could probably reel off a list and we'd be fairly good at them. The head of planning will propose the inclusion of something specific in relation to what the local history society would like in a moment. We then also need to guide officers, because any approval on this would be subject to a satisfactory S106, which needs to cover the carbon fund contributions already identified in the officer report. And I think from what members are saying, members would like to see this as that the units are all affordable, and therefore a financial viability assessment will be needed to demonstrate that that's not the case. Now, have I construed members' wishes reasonably correctly? Good. Councillor Duncan, sorry.
Thank you. Before we move on to that, there are just a couple of matters of detail. I was going to ask how the modern 3-storey building related to the older 2-storey, because often heights are different. And I think it does say in the report that the bridge height is 3 metres. There's a difference of 3 metres.
Alex,
does that seem...
Yeah, fine. No, I don't want to lose the detail on this. No.
So there's two aspects to take into account when we're looking at those changes. One is the visual aspect of it. And so you'll have to draw your own conclusion in terms of the merits of the visual approach that's been taken by the design before you. It has been broken up quite a lot. The bulk and the scale of the existing building in terms of that C-shaped courtyard arrangement has been broken up into separate units, which is part of the applicant's suggestion of how to address that. They've also changed the materials, trying to break up the overall scale of the building when you view it. The two other aspects that we would want to take into account is if you have an increased ridge height in relation to neighbouring dwellings, what is the impact on those neighbouring dwellings? So we have before us a situation where the applicant has included these diagrams which demonstrate a sort of objective assessment of what the impact would be in terms of daylight and sunlight on those neighbouring dwellings, and they're saying there's no further increase of that impact. And then secondly, you have that diagram which shows the accessibility of lights to those neighbouring dwellings, which are those sort of red lines which shoot off out of the existing neighbouring dwellings, and they're seeking to demonstrate in that picture that notwithstanding the increased height, that the way in which it's been designed would accommodate that right to light to those buildings around it, so therefore not impact upon them. And then the last thing to take into account is we have that photograph at the end which shows from an elevated position how this site sits into all the others around it. So if you can see, there is some variation in terms of roof form and also in terms of designs and what you can see within a wider view such as this. So what you're considering is whether having separate blocks in this position here of an increased roof form over what is currently there, but broken up in terms of their visual style, would be harmful when seen in context of what's going on in the surrounding built environment. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, sure.
That's very difficult to answer with certainty about a sectional drawing. If you give me a second, I can see if one's in the plan pack.
If I can give a further comment whilst Alex does that. So there were two sort of key issues that we looked at. The principle of demolition of the building, which obviously you know officers' views on, and whether the proposed building was considered acceptable on its own individual merit. And officers are not raising an objection to the design, scale, massing of the proposed building. And what I'd also say in that regard is there was a very lengthy pre-application advice process with the applicant where we basically told them from the outset there was always going to be an objection in principle, but we will work with you so that at the point that there's a committee report, that there's only the one refusal reason, so that through that pre-application advice process we address all the neighbour impacts, all the design issues. So even though the Council's Conservation Officer objects to this proposal, she was actually very actively involved in discussions concerning the design of the building.
Does that...
There's two...
that cover that point for you?
It does. Thank you. There's just a couple of other things. I'll just list them. The materials are shown as red brick, brown and grey, which seems to me remarkably depressing combination, particularly for people at the latter end of their life. And also, if it's in a conservation area, I mean, some of the older cottages are in stock brick, at least a lighter colour, which I think would be a much more matching appearance with the conservation area and with the character of that area. The other thing is cloisters. What is their appearance? I can't really see in the plans exactly how those cloisters are going to look. And also the parking, the access. Have we got 6 metres in front of it? Because I assume these spaces are 4.8, in which case you need that and a sort of metre, 1.2 metres, don't you? You need 6 metres for turning, and it did look very tight. So they're just my last points. Thank you.
Just on the materials issue, I know the Conservation Officer actually concurs with your views. The reason that the submission is as it is that it's envisaged that it was envisioned that were it to be recommended approval, you'd have a condition requiring materials to be agreed. And what I'd recommend would be an informative to say that we'd expect to see different materials than those currently proposed.
Sorry, the cloisters at the front here.
I know to the rear, so obviously I'm avoiding your question, but I know to the rear facing the neighbours the cloisters are obscure glazed and the layout is such that there's no habitable rooms that are effectively facing a cloister, therefore the outlook is restricted.
I know, I appreciate that. It's really an internal corridor within the built structure, isn't it? These are cloisters at the front, where it says cloister.
What it says.
What
plan are you on, Councillor?
This is page 231, and it says ground floor and site plan. And it shows cloister with a gatehouse entrance, but it's not very clear in the elevations. It seems to have disappeared, which is why I asked, is it glass? What is it? What is it?
Hang on, we're on page 238 the officers are looking at the moment, so just to help you all. Can't see a number on it. If that will help me move forward, it's unusual, but I will take it.
South elevation front is showing.
The officers will have it anyway, they just haven't got it with them tonight. Yeah.
That shows the cloister. The front of the door.
Yeah. There you go.
I mean, we haven't got to the point of conditions. No, the detail of the cloister, just as you as a committee, you're used to hearing conditions for materials, balcony details. That cloister detail is going to get refined, and it will probably be its own planning condition. So if I'm providing you the future list of planning conditions, you're going to have a condition with final details of the cloister. But I'll pass around the plan so some members can see the actual detail. And there's a much better plan. So it's an elevational treatment, so those can see.
That way,
but I will send it round.
That, I presume, is in the design and access statement you guys have already got.
Yeah. No, I've seen that plan before.
That's fine. I'm just concurring we're not being given additional information that planning officers haven't already seen.
And the last thing was the parking.
Parking, yeah. Parking, he's looking out or trying to forget. I'm not sure which. Alex, you're not trying to slide the question, are you?
I wouldn't dream of it, Chairman.
No, I know.
So, if I can first draw your attention on page 30 to the comments of the highways officer. So the last paragraph from the comments of the highways officer is that sufficient room within the development to provide the proposed car parking spaces and for vehicles to enter and leave the site in forward gear. And I've also made a sort of very quick measurement on the plans in front of us, and the space behind those spaces is definitely greater than 5 metres, and the combination of that measurement and that comment, I'm satisfied that I can recommend to you that will be sufficient. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
In terms, the head of planning is going to propose one more specific, just so you hear it.
So if officers were drawing up a list of proposed planning conditions, that there wouldn't be any conditions you haven't seen before as members. So we would cover conditions to prevent any overlooking from neighbours, materials, the finer details, all the normal planning conditions. But there was a request by Uxbridge Local History Society, and I'll paraphrase the key bit. Basically, if it's approved, they request that a full photographic record of the site be made and deposited in the Borough Archives and Uxbridge Central Library. So what I wish to propose is that there would be a bespoke condition that required a full photographic survey of this building if we were allowing demolition of it, in addition to all of the normal planning conditions that one might expect to see for a new building for 30 flats.
I think that's entirely sensible.
Yes, I do. And could I ask that photographic record be both external and internal?
Okay. Yeah.
It may historically then help to, in 100 years, show why we did what we did.
I think it's a very valid suggestion. I would also comment, sorry, Alex, before.
I'm on another point, if I may.
Yeah, go on.
So, just as members are talking about conditions which officers will be seeking to secure after this meeting, There was a conversation earlier about securing M43 compliance, which is wheelchair accessible compliance for all the units.
Yes.
As I stated in the earlier answer, there might be some small implications for the actual design of the units to accommodate that. You might want to consider, therefore, giving delegated powers to the head of planning to agree minor changes to the scheme if any tweaking needs to happen to make sure those units meet M43 standard.
Are you about to move me forward? Go on.
Thank you, Chairman. Also, I don't know whether it's possible or not, but a blue park plaque might be also on the new building to emphasise what it was before in the historic.
I know it's not within our remit, but I think it's a good suggestion.
And also maybe some sort of art or something. You know, sculpture of that.
Can we ask that planning officers investigate
yes,
what's
that's
possible?
what I want. There's a 106 agreement.
Okay. We're going to delegate to the head of planning, hopefully to draw this up in a moment. I think the 3 points worth just pulling out, in addition to all the standard stuff, because I'll come to myself and the Labour lead if everyone's comfortable with that, is we will be expecting the materials condition on this to be stronger than normal, and may well make reference to not what we currently see, but the condition around the cloisters will be stronger than normal, because we want to be certain exactly what we're getting there. There's obviously the History Society in there, and then the S106, as well as the M43. Okay, you've got that. Does that lot pick up what you've got, Alex? Would somebody give me a proposal to take me forward? Councillor Morgan. We overturn the officer's recommendation.
I propose that we overturn the officer's recommendation and agree to the demolition of this
subject
to
conditions
and 106.
Good. All those in favour of the proposal that we overturn the officer's recommendation, please clearly show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. I'm now going to move to item 7.1, Forest and Ground Way, Stockley Park, which might be a slightly quicker application. All right. Someone's got your access statement. I don't know where it's got to, but somebody's got it. Right. If we can proceed with item 7, please. Matt, you're getting this one, eh?
I am. Thank you, Chairman. Item 7, 1 First Ground Way in Stockley Park. This application relates to an existing office building in a Stockley Park business park. The proposals are to remove the existing pitched roof of the building and to construct a single-storey roof extension to provide additional office space. I'll just show you what that is. So you have the existing elevations on the top here and the proposals. You can see the pitched roof is removed and an additional floor which is set in from the sides by about 2 metres is proposed. The proposal, it is also proposed to relocate the relocation of a plant tower, 220 square metres of PV panels, plus associated recladding and refurbishment of the existing building. If I can just show you, this is the existing tower here with a little bridge. That's going to now be attached to the building. If I just show you a few of the other drawings, just take you through. There's the site in relation to Stockley Park. It's just here in the building. I'll just look. The development will result in the addition of 1 parking space. I can just show you exactly what that is on the plan, if I can find it. Yes. So the 1 additional space is actually right here by the new cycle store and bin store. There are no changes proposed at all to any of the landscaping. The principle of the office use in Stockley Park is clearly established, and the majority of the amendments to the service tower have actually already been previously approved under a separate planning application. The additional floor is considered to be an acceptable design and is an appropriate form of development in the location. Current parking ratios are exceeded in Stockley Park, and as such, the additional floor space with only one additional parking space is appropriate and will bring the building closer to policy compliance in terms of parking ratios. I'll just point members in the direction of the addendum. You'll note that we're proposing to remove condition 6, which relates to controls of plant noise, as the development's located in a commercial area, not in a residential area, so there's no need for the condition. For the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved.
Councillor Higgins, I saw first, then Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, well, I'll go with officers' recommendations straight away, but just for clarity, is this the Apple building? Is it the client Apple?
No idea. Not sure it's relevant to the planning application.
No, it's not. It's just obviously
An aside.
a side issue.
Officers don't know at the
I
current
think
moment.
it's... Anyway, I agree with officers' recommendations.
Councillor Duncan
I
wants...
second.
Oh! All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you very much. That one's approved. Right. We'll make some progress now. Item 8 is Bishop Ramsey Church of England School, Hume Way, and a temporary variation of planning permission. Quick summary, please.
I haven't got my microphone on. Following the granting of planning permission for the erection of single-storey extensions to the school sports hall in March 2015, they are now seeking temporary approval to allow the use of the Warrender Way pedestrian access for general pedestrian use between 8 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. on Saturdays and on school days between 6 and 9:30 p.m. for a temporary period until the 2nd of November 2016. Now, if I just show members, you've got, I can't quite see, this is the sports hall here, and there's approval to build single-storey re-extensions. The current access is through here, and for safety reasons, they want to block that for the period of construction and to allow children's access through here. If I can just show you a photo, that's the entrance down on, that's the gates of Warrender Way there. Just showing some of the parking in the area.
There should be hands here. Go on, who wants to go? Councillor Morgan, you go first this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll go with the officer's recommendation.
Do you have any other views on it before we do? Go on. At the bottom, past the sports hall.
Yeah, High Grove is
there.
No,
It does not. Anybody else got anything else? No. All those in favour, please clearly show. That one's unanimously approved. Item 9, Heathrow Point West, 234 Bath Road, Heathrow, page 89.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning permission is sought for the erection of a 4-storey hotel annex, including a link bridge and associated amendments to landscaping and car parking. We just show members to the site here on Bath Road. There is a previous permission to convert the office building to a hotel, and essentially what they're doing is providing this additional annex. We just show you on the plans how this looks. So this is, this here is the existing building, which for which there's planning permission to convert to a hotel, and this is the annex with a link bridge to the north. The principle of a hotel use on the site was established by the virtue of planning permission being granted last year for a change of use of the offices to a hotel. The annex, as you will see on the plans, is very much in keeping with the existing building, and officers believe that it should be approved for that reason. In terms of traffic, the level of on-site car parking provision is at a ratio of 1 to 4 guest rooms. It is similar to that of other hotel developments approved by the council, located nearby and serving Heathrow Airport. This is consistent with Council's adopted maximum parking standards. In view of its location, it is anticipated that much of the business of the hotel will be related to Heathrow Airport, and it is likely that there will be a high proportion of non-private car traffic, with taxis being used to a large extent. Long-term parking on the site, otherwise known as park and fly, will not be available to visitors. There's also a generous provision of 14 motorcycle spaces. Should just turn your attention to the addendum. You will note that there are additional secure by design comments. Condition 11 of the committee report covers secure by design. Therefore, for the reasons summarised, it is recommended that the application be approved.
Can I just ask one question before I bring a member in? Being a hotel down by Heathrow, are we doing landscaping on this? And if we are, then I would expect to see the standard condition about species that don't attract birds and berries and, you know.
They aren't asking us to add that informative anymore.
They're not?
Yeah, so we have comments from the safeguarding people, so I know they've commented.
And
they've asked for informative relating to cranes, but they haven't asked for the berries informative.
Weird.
So that is the reason it isn't there.
Right. I think we'll put it on anyway, I think we'll, yeah, I think I'd be more comfortable with it on, because I suspect they've just missed it. Councillor Higgins. I don't know what he said. They didn't, actually. Because actually, we're reducing car parking here, not increasing it, aren't we? We are.
Secure by... You two thought you how's that? Can we...
Hang on, no, it's in there. It's in the condition. Electrical charging, 8 active, 4 passive, page 97.
When you start getting rid of the motor, I'll stop talking about electrical.
Agree with both of you. Councillor Duncan, sorry.
Can you just confirm that all access into the building is going to be opposite the rear of the existing hotel? It looks as if it is, because there's housing on the other side.
It will be.
We wouldn't want vehicles going round dropping people off late at night, which would make it very disturbing.
The entrance of the annex faces the existing hotel, so it doesn't face the road.
So all the access is through that point.
That's right.
Thank you.
And then are we, Councillor Higgins?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
As amended. No, is it amended in the addendum? No. Okay. All those in favour, please clearly show.
Added, you wanted to add something?
There was berries.
Oh yeah, the berries. Yeah, just add berries. Sorry, yes, my fault. And condition 11 as per the addendum. Yes, thank you. We have moved and seconded. All those in favour, please clearly show. That one's unanimously approved. The next one is the Holland site, which they want to make a minor extension to enclose the plant area. We've seen this site I don't know how many times. Do people need a presentation on it, or are we happy with the officer report? Agreed and seconded. All those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. Just I know that I'd like to devote some time to item 11. That's why I'm conscious of time. Right, the last one of the night, item 11, the former Trimite site, Arundel Road, Uxbridge. Presentation on this one is going to be split, I understand. Alex is going to present you the standard planning stuff on this, and Man Mahan is going to talk about traffic and transport, because I think that also figures in this application. Alex?
So if I briefly take you through the normal planning slides. So the key aspect for this application is that we're in an IBA, industrial and business area, and therefore the principle is that we should be looking for business uses in this area. The application is for the redevelopment of the site to provide 3 business units. So in terms of the planning policy requirement, the application is fully compliant with what we're seeking to achieve on this site. I will skate over some of the highways details for now. This is a drawing showing the positioning of lighting columns, seeking to demonstrate that the spillage of light will not affect the neighbouring properties. I think one of the key aspects of this site, if I go back to this drawing here, is you'll see here's the site around in red, and actually portions of the site front onto existing residential properties. So we're trying to strike the right balance between meeting the policy requirement for reusing this land in an IBA for business and industrial purposes, whilst putting in place adequate safeguards to protect those adjacent residential properties. So we've looked at the lighting. I'll pass over the highways issue. Here we have the elevations of the buildings, which are typical of their type, and you'd see them in many other industrial areas. What we also have here is a plan showing the landscaping which is to be provided. So this is the landscaping around the first building, which goes along the road here, and that's the inner road within the industrial area. But we also have landscaping along the northern boundary, which is the element which would front towards residential properties. You'll also see from your report in relation to noise impact of the development, there is to be an acoustic fence, 2.5 metre high acoustic fence, which will be placed alongside that landscaping to seek to add further protection to the amenities of the neighbouring properties. Here we have the elevations of Unit 3, and here are some photos of the site. The only other thing I would highlight, if I just go back, I apologise, is separation distances. So you'll see in the report that we are close to residential properties, but the closest building is Unit 2, which has an office unit, which is just here. Sorry, I apologise. Unit 2 is just here. And the report identifies that we're some 30 metres away from the windows within these premises here, which back onto the site. So in line with our standard separation distances, we as officers feel that separation distance is sufficient to protect the amenities of those neighbouring properties. I'll give you some context by taking you through the photographs of the site, and then I shall pass to my colleague. So this is the aerial shot of the site. You can see that much of the site is currently vacant, and previous buildings that were on the site that came into their use were demolished. The site is surrounded by hoarding, as you'll see in this photograph here, and therefore the current position on the site is not one which adds to the visual amenity or visual interest of the area, and so there are possibly wider benefits to be achieved by the redevelopment of the site. So where you're seeing this hoarding at present, under the proposals you would be seeing a landscape buffer which separates the new buildings from this particular roadway, and then we come round the corner here, and again you'd have the landscape buffer in place. Here you can see the close relationship between the existing residential properties and the site. We can't change that, but what we've sought to do is to make sure that any impacts are mitigated as far as possible. This is coming round the bend, showing that same relationship. And then this is the last remaining building on site, which is no longer in use, which is the former Trimite building. And you can see that that building has already fallen into disrepair. And then this looks down from that road back into the IBA towards the other existing business uses. These photos here show the scale of some of the associated development within the area. So what you have here is single-storey industrial premises of normal height, which has to accommodate modern-day racking systems, but you can see the scale of other buildings which already exist in the surrounding IBA. I shall pass my clicker to my colleague, Mamahan Ranger, who will take you through the highways elements of the scheme. Sorry, Mamahan.
Before I start discussing the highways issues, I'd like to inform members that the council is carrying out highway works on the canal bridge on Cowley Mill Road, whereby the carriageway width is going to be reduced and the weight limit reduced to 7.5 tons. So that would make it physically impossible for any lorries to go over the bridge in the future. Sorry? Yeah, those works are currently taking place, and we're expecting completion in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. Now, the highway works that are required as part of this development are listed on page 147. the site is going to provide a new access from Ashley Road, and there are existing accesses on Cowley Mill Road and Wallingford Road, and those would need to be closed and reinstated to footways. On Cowley Mill Road, there's a road widening line, and we've asked the developer to actually dedicate that piece of land to the Highway Authority after reinstating it to a footway. So there'll be a wider footway fronting the site on Cowley Mill Road. There are also resurfacing of the footpath on the Cowley Mill frontage, and weighting restrictions on the site's frontage on Cowley Mill Road and Ashley Road, because that's where the new access is going to be, to enable lorries to be able to turn in and out. At present, there are cars parked on both sides of the road in Ashley Road. Now, what we had requested the applicant to provide us with a plan showing all the highway works on one drawing, but we haven't received it as yet. So what I'd like to suggest is that where the highways works are listed on page 147, there's no mention of closure of the existing accesses, so that ought to be added into that. Thank you.
Yeah, so sorry, Member had discussed that with me beforehand, so I'd like to add that to the report, that incorporates closure.
Is that part of the S106? Well, highway works are part of the S106, S278, so I'm guessing that those are going to go in there.
Yeah, it would form part of the heads of terms, the highway works.
Yeah, okay. That's done, right.
Sorry, Chairman. Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Alex, you've got a bit more.
Very quickly. Very quickly, just to conclude our presentation, you've got the addendum sheet in front of you. So there's an additional condition as per the MOD request for air safeguarding. We have changes to condition 5, typographical change to refuse storage, but also an addition to secure 8 motorcycle spaces. There's some confused wording, in the report about active and passive parking provision. We can confirm that the condition as set out is correct and is policy compliant. And also the Flood and Water Management Officer wants to know what's happening to the reuse of water on site, and there's a further condition suggested to be added to the scheme. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Oswald, will you take us out?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I move the officer's recommendation with the addendum and the other conditions and the 106 Section 278 agreements as well. I think it's a good use because it's a good industrial estate, and this will tidy it up and it just brings it back into use.
All right, take forward that. Anybody have any other points they want clarified?
I do.
Who's first? Well, I'll go take Councillor Edwards, then Councillor.
Thank you. Not wishing to move away from Councillor Oswald's position, I think this is welcomed investment in the area. What I'd like is actually clarification on the slide that just happens to be before us. The tracking diagram shows that for Unit 1, each of the HGV bays is accessible if any of them are occupied, whereas for Units 2 and 3, the tracking diagram, although it shows multiple bays, it would suggest only one can be used at any one time.
Member Han, could you comment on that, please?
Sorry, can you advise which one bays you're talking about?
Three bays. Any one's occupied, you can't get to the others according to the tracking diagram. Is that an issue? The same here.
No, I think there are spaces on the side. There's plenty of room here for them to actually drive in their reverse. What they've done is they've given you a simple solution that a lorry can enter the site and come out, instead of providing...
So from a highway perspective, are you absolutely certain that vehicles could enter all 3 bays in there and exit? Although they've only shown one for simplicity.
They've only shown a turning space.
Right.
They have not provided auto tracks for how each of those bays are going to be occupied by a lorry.
Right.
Yeah,
are you happy that with the spaces there that can be achieved?
There is plenty of space there, yeah.
In particular, with regard to Unit 3 and the car park cars that make it quite tight for turning if they're reversing into that.
Yep. I see they can go in there and reverse like that.
If I'll be guided by the technical on this. If the highways officer isn't raising any concerns, and he certainly isn't looking worried at the minute, so that's always a good sign in my book. Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, just a thing about materials. Do we have any knowledge of what materials this building's going to be built on?
Standard industrial, probably.
Is it steel? What is it? Really?
The chairman just said to me, standard industrial. That's the best summary I could give, but we could refer to the...
I too think it's very, very welcome, and I will second.
You're going to second? Oh, I'll wait
before I second, I require electric PowerPoint for electric cars.
It's already in there. For lorries.
That's in the addendum.
So the addendum, the PowerPoints are all clarified. Yeah, we got electric vehicles in there.
Okay, fine.
The head of planning would just like delegated authority. I think we were at two.
It's just that if you're happy that should our highway engineer wish to add any minor points to those set out in
we delegated the head of planning to do it.
Are you happy to delegate?
We don't want to see it again. We delegated him to do it. Right, we're proposed and seconded as per the addendum. All in favour, please clearly show. That was unanimously approved. Thank you very much indeed. That's 10 to 8. For those who are doing north, you've now got 10 minutes. I forgot. Yeah, thank you for reminding me, gentlemen. I'm so used to doing it at the start. Now, I have a proposal. It's a slightly unusual one. The minutes of the 21st of June, I understand from officers, are not fully agreed. There needs to be some amendment work done to them. I'm not going to try and do that now, because there's 8 pages of some of it. So what I'm going to ask for is that we defer the minutes of 21st of June to the next meeting, but, there is a but to this, the head of planning, the amendments reflect the discussion, not the resolution as I understand it. The head of planning would like to get the decision notice issued and would therefore like authority to proceed with the decision notice referred to in particular for the Power Day development. Yes?
Yeah, well, sorry, I should probably just clarify. We don't wait for the minutes to be agreed for issuing planning decisions. Well, what I wanted to do now is just clarify with you that where it says resolved on page 11, I think the decision the committee made was that you agreed to refuse the application for the 4 reasons in the report. There was a 5th reason in the addendum sheet that related to the Network Rail level crossing.
Yep, I wasn't here.
So the reason was set out in the addendum. So obviously it's important that reason is in refusal reason, and you agreed an additional informative that I suggested on the night to do with Article 35. So
is that your recollection
of what you did? So the decision we would be issuing would have those points.
You happy with that?
Yeah. The changes we wish to make to the minutes are in the text that leads up to the the result
we will
bit.
defer minutes to next time, but
it's been to the GLA and the mayor has just come back to us to say we can issue a refusal.
It's back with the head of planning. Sorry, Councillor Higgins. I know, I saw you. Is that in relation to these minutes you have a point?
We did have a nuisance discussion about supplying shadowing and other reports, shadowing diagrams to reports in the future. I don't see that in the minutes, because last time I got done over by the officers.
You did not. Never, Councillor Higgins. I can't believe that's the case.
Then I agreed the minutes, and I said, oh, by the way, you forgot that. That's just 2 minutes ago.
I will ask officers to look at that when they do it. Councillor Duncan, sorry.
Thank you. There's just a correction on page 5. It's not Terry Morgan. It's Terry.
Yeah, we know there are a number of corrections.
There's 5 or 6 corrections
in here. Yeah. Officers have got those, so that's why I don't want to agree them tonight, because we have to work through and find them all. Is everybody happy with that as a proposal? Good. In that case, I will formally close just after 10 to 8. 10 minutes, people.